Hello, FPL managers, and welcome to the Fantasy Football Hub Game Week 8 preview with me, James. And as always, I'm joined by big man Bakar. Bakar, very dramatically, you activated your wild card a few minutes prior to Game Week 7. How did it pay off for you?
Thanks for having me on, James. Well, Game Week 7 seems like an eternity ago, doesn't it? I mean, so much time has passed, so much has gone on. Um, I mean, it went really well. Um, I got like 60 points and outscored the top 10K by almost 17 points, which is better than I could have dreamt of, even in my wildest dreams. Um, I've throughout this past month or so, throughout the month of September, I've been flirting with the wild card, on different occasions. I've come very close to activating it. Never really thought um, that it would be the right time to activate it in any given game week. But last game week on Saturday, because I had Triple United, Shaw, Greenwood, and Ronaldo, and I was awaiting confirmation on Greenwood, Ronaldo, Shaw all starting, and we didn't get any, and I had no bench. So, and then there were rumors, some murmurs of a Ronaldo rest or something along the lines. So I thought I could perhaps make a team which is better in the long run and which is better for Game Week 7 as well. So even though I missed the price rises of Game Week 7, I came up with a very very good score, and I'm really happy with my team going forward. How was your week, James?
Good, actually. It was 51 points, which I think, all things considered, bearing in mind it was one of those weeks, sometimes you look at your team and you think there is no way I'm getting a green arrow here. When I look at people that had, double Chelsea defence and Lukaku as captain, and there I was with no
I
Chelsea
was one
players
of
at
those.
all as they went into Southampton. I was very fortunate, I think, to not only survive Game Week 7, but to come out of it with a pretty good green arrow, particularly after the run I'd had pretty much since Game Week 3. I think I'd had consecutive red arrows. So always nice, as I said to Abdul in our captaincy video that was released on Tuesday, always nice to go into the international break with a green arrow. So I was very, very
No better
grateful.
feeling. No
But
better
now, of
feeling for
course, I,
sure.
I find myself lucky to have survived that Chelsea Southampton game, and now I'm keen to start moving on to Chelsea assets, most of whom I'm sure we're going to talk about in this video. Bakar, shall we get into it? Let's firstly take a look at Game Week 8's fixtures. We have Watford versus Liverpool in the early kickoff on Saturday. It is another Saturday deadline in Game Week 8, which will be a joy for FPL managers. We always prefer, well, at least I prefer a Saturday morning deadline, Bakar, an extra day to think about things. I don't know about you. Let's move into it. You'll actually see here, the first slide is one of Jota. But right before we started recording, Bakar reminded me that Jota actually, has he been confirmed out for this game week, Bakar?
No, he's not confirmed out, but he's been sent back to Liverpool by Portugal, and according to reports, he's a serious doubt. I
Okay.
personally don't think he'll start, but because Firmino didn't travel for Brazil as well, and he's had like 2 weeks of rest, and I'm sure he's been training. So there's a good chance that Firmino starts ahead of Jota, especially if he's a doubt. Um, but I guess you can wait, till Saturday morning, because we have an early kickoff, and there's a good chance if you own Jota, you might get news before the deadline.
Mm, Okay, so what we have to do is, viewers, just pretend that this is Trent that we've got on the screen, because there is better news about Trent, isn't there, Bakar? What are the implications for Trent's emergence in training, particularly for those who are playing their wild card ahead of Game Week 8?
I think he's got to be be an auto pick, in my opinion, for those who are on wildcard, because um, I simply don't think there's another defender who comes close to matching Trent when it comes to defensive and attacking pedigree. He's only two players have created more big chances than him this season, and that's despite him missing a game. So he's a lock for me, because if you're on wildcard, you want to build a team for the long run, and Trent, I think, is has to be a season keeper. at least for the long run, you want him in, because the last thing you want is to go without Trent, and then once he explodes, you have to sort of restructure your team to buy him back for hits. I don't think I like that idea. I'd simply just get him in right now.
Yeah, and if you want any sort of evidence about Trent's creative output, just go to fantasyfootballhub.co.uk/Opta and sort by basically any of the creativity stats he is, as Bakar said, either at the top or very near the top in pretty much all of them. Okay, it's tempting to talk about all of Liverpool's assets, particularly in a fixture like this. We could talk about Salah. I'm sure he's probably got your armband ahead of game week 8, Bakar. However, you also want to focus on the team that Liverpool will be facing. They are the hosts, Watford, and in particular, Ismaila Sarr.
Now, what's one thing which is worth keeping in mind here is that Claudio Ranieri is going to be in charge, and there's always this new manager effect, this bounce which teams often go through with new managers. Watford under their previous manager, they were primarily a defensive team where Sarr was their only outlet of attack, and especially in away games they carried next to no threat. Even in their most recent game against Leeds, now Leeds don't exactly have a watertight defense. They're anything but that. Watford managed just the 2 shots inside the box, and I was thinking Sarr ahead of his fixtures is an obvious sell. I still think he's a sell, but if you have other pressing concerns in your team, then I think he might be worth keeping for one more week.
I think for a lot of FPL managers and indeed football fans in general, the enduring memory of Sarr from his previous stint in the Premier League was that incredible
Yes.
brace against Liverpool, which ended what was an unbeaten run up until that point. And that was, not exactly from a player who had been in any kind of recent form. But it is very true. I think with Sarr, it's one of those things where if a team plays Norwich, you do have to take their attacking stats with a pinch of salt. Because it feels as though all of his good stats were padded in that game.
Absolutely. I study stats religiously, and over the first 7 game weeks, the significant majority of his threat came in that Norwich fixture alone. He was still getting shots in the box here or there, but he wasn't getting the quality chances. In that game, he managed 4 big chances alone, which just tells you all you need to know about Norwich.
Yeah, and considering he's played 7 and only has 5 big chances in total, that is the Norwich effect in action.
Exactly.
Okay, let's move on to the Aston Villa versus Wolves game at 3:00 on the Saturday afternoon, and it's the story of these 2 forwards who combined beautifully in game week 7. Hwang scoring 2 goals, Jimenez assisting both of them. Could this be a pairing to keep an eye on, Bakar?
Absolutely. This has been a very popular dilemma, especially for those who are, on a wild card this week as to what to do with Hwang and Jimenez. I'm a Jimenez owner, and I think he overperformed in that game against Newcastle you were just speaking about. His expected assists weren't all that great, and Hwang, in fact, was very, very clinical from the chances that Jimenez created. If I was on a wild card this week, I won't pick Jimenez. Personally, I think he's a good long-term hold for those who own him, because I think he's gonna, tick along with points here or there. Even when you look at the way Wolves play, right? So Jimenez drops deep. He has the ability, he has the passing ability, the creativity to create lots of chances for his teammates. Hwang is the one who's making runs in behind as the inside forward, right? So he's likely to get chances. I think he's a good enabler to pick if you're on a wild card in particular. But I don't think there's any reason to sell Jimenez at this point in time either. I mean, when you look at their numbers over the last 3 games, because that's the sample size that is available to me ever since Hwang and Jimenez have started playing together. Jimenez has had 5 big chance involvements to Hwang's 3. So Jimenez is still the slightly superior pick, considering his bonus potential with the chances he creates. But that almost 2 million premium that you pay makes a huge difference, and you can sort of invest those funds elsewhere.
Yeah, completely. I mean, Jimenez's creative stats are actually better than his goal threat at the moment, an XA of 2.30. So even though you're absolutely right, he did, as a Jimenez owner, I consider myself lucky after game week 7. I would say across the course of the season, he's probably earned his 2 assists. But
Yeah.
is he going to get that lucky every week? Probably not. So yeah, an interesting one. Happy to have him for now. Aston Villa, an interesting fixture. Could be good, could be bad. We'll have to see. Speaking of Aston Villa, I'm ambushing you here. But any love for Watkins? Because he seems to be playing pretty well, just based on the eye test alone. Bakar did pretty well last week too. Could he be an interesting differential?
I think there are better options out there at this point in time, but I think he's carrying the significant majority of the goal threat that Villa have. Even when they're playing two up front since game week 4, I think they've started playing two up front with Ings and Watkins, but Watkins' stats are far better than that of Ings in that spell. He's had almost like 3 times the number of shots in the box. The goal threat, big chances, XG. Having said that, I don't think I'd go there because their fixtures are a bit dodgy. I mean, Wolves at home, I'm not sure because Wolves have a decent defense. Then Arsenal away, Arsenal in decent form. West Ham, Southampton away. I think there are better options out there, particularly when I look at Tony or Huang. I think I prefer those over Watkins at this point in time.
See, this is why I relish speaking to big man Bakar, because I can put him on the spot and give him a totally off script question about a player that we haven't even discussed. And he will come out with stats, fixtures, and potential alternatives that are better. You are a treasure trove, Bakar, of
Thank you very
FPL
much.
based wisdom. Right, okay, Leicester versus Manchester United. We're going to talk about Man United assets, but firstly, let's give this man some time, Jamie Vardy. He keeps scoring, Bakar.
He keeps scoring and we keep ignoring him. That's been the story of the season, hasn't it? Every single week we're sitting here speaking about him doing well week in week out. Um, I mean, I don't think there's much to add here. Honestly, the only thing I'm going to say is that um, I just think that the value the others are offering, when you look at Jimenez, when you look at Tony, when you look at Antonio, they're scoring the same amount of points, more or less. Their underlying numbers are more or less the same, if not better than Vardy's. In fact, Vardy has been, very clinical this season. Um, I think there are better options out there. I still think, despite his goal scoring form, you can afford to look elsewhere. And Inacho is someone who's caught my attention now. Now that he scored in the previous week, I think he's very, very likely to start this week again. And we noticed last season when Inacho and Vardy were playing together after game week 23, if I remember correctly, Inacho's goal threat was far better than that of Vardy's last season when the two of them were playing together. And I think that might be the case again this season. Um, but even, if we assume the both carry a similar amount of goal threat, Inacho's far cheaper, and if he keeps scoring well, then he's one to keep an eye on, particularly this week. He has a fixture against a Varane and a Maguire-less United defense who've kept just one clean sheet in their first 7 fixtures. So this looks good again for the Leicester attack.
Yeah, I have to admit, I found it strange that Iheanacho wasn't a shoe-in since the start of the season, given how well he finished last season. But yeah, good to see that he seems to have earned his way back into that Leicester side. Let's see how they get on against their opponents. What I've got up here at the moment, Bakar, is total key passes since Ronaldo joined Man United at the start of game week 4. And we have at the very top Bruno Fernandes and Luke Shaw with 17 and 13 key passes respectively. They top that table, and it seems as though Ronaldo's influence is mostly to blame there. Ronaldo continues to elevate those around him. Did you get rid of him on your wild card, firstly?
I did. I did because I didn't think of him as a captaincy option going forward. When you look at Man United's fixture run, particularly from game week 9 onwards, when they have Liverpool, Spurs, City, and Chelsea and Arsenal in 5 of their next 6 after game week 9, I decided to get rid because I thought that I could make better use of my money elsewhere. And Lukaku in particular, I thought was a much better alternative with much better fixtures. Um, Having said that, I think if there are no pressing concerns in your team, you can even potentially save a transfer because Ronaldo and Lukaku both, according to the odds this week, have a 49% chance of scoring. Leicester don't exactly have a watertight defense this season either. I mean, their defense has actually been very, very leaky. I fully expect United to score at least once, and obviously given how influential he has been this season, Ronaldo is highly likely to be involved. So I think that this is not exactly a pressing concern. This Lukaku to Ronaldo move. Ronaldo to Lukaku move can afford to wait a week potentially.
It felt like something I would definitely do a few game weeks ago, but now as a Ronaldo owner, I'm probably going to leave it at least one more fixture because I actually agree with you there. I think Leicester might actually be a better opponent for an attacker than Brentford at the moment, but I'm sure you'll elaborate on that shortly. Speaking of Manchester, let's talk about across the city. Manchester City, they face Burnley in another 3 o'clock kickoff. You've wanted to highlight 2 of City's players, Grealish and Foden. You could theoretically, Bakar, highlight any one of Man City's players in a fixture like this.
Absolutely, and when you look at City's record against Burnley, James, it's top notch. Over the past 3 or 4 years, you look at their record: 3-0, 4-0, 5-0. That's the only result you'll find in abundance. So this is a fixture City like to start pad in, and I'd honestly love to own one of their attackers in this fixture. But then again, you know what the problem is. That lies in the security of starts. Even tonight, as we speak, Foden and Grealish are playing for England. They're starting, so you never know whether they're going to start. I mean, Foden has been in excellent form. He delivered a great performance against Chelsea, and then an even better performance against Liverpool over the weekend. But there's a good chance he might be rested. I was going through some numbers, Foden from last season onwards. He started 12 out of the 13 Champions League games last season, James, and only twice did he, go on a run of 3 or more consecutive Premier League starts. Only twice over the whole season did he start more than 3 games on the bounce, 3 Premier League games on the bounce. And that tells me that, Pep, there was a clear pattern of what Pep was doing, and he was more or less preserving him for the Champions League game. I won't be surprised again, honestly, if he rests him for Burnley and plays him in the Champions League. That's something that might happen. That's something that might happen with Grealish as well, with Sterling around, with, Mahrez is likely to play on the right, with Torres potentially back in form for Spain again. That could happen. And, it's a roulette. It's a lottery. You know as much as I do regarding this matter.
Well, I bought a ticket to that lottery, Bakar, in that I still own Ferran Torres and don't plan to get rid of him ahead of Game Week 8. I will be hoping. A couple of Man City fans have said that Burnley is the sort of fixture in which Pep likes to play a striker rather than, a false 9 like he has done in previous fixtures. So I feel like with Ferran Torres's convincing performances during the international break, hopefully Guardiola will be reminded as to the player that he is. But, 3 rests in a row, it's quite painful. I feel like anyone who's keeping Torres deserves at least 2 points on the board from him. But yeah, interesting also, just whilst we're on the subject of Grealish, that actually for a player who started every single game so far this season in the Premier League, his stats are actually pretty poor. When we look at Jimenez, for example, who we just had up on screen, both his XG and XA were above 2. Grealish still around that kind of 1.5 mark for each of those metrics, which is surprising, really, isn't it, Bakar? Because usually the formula is, if you're a City attacker and you start, your stats are going to be pretty incredible.
Now, this is what surprised me with Grealish, James. I mean, particularly when you look at his numbers, the interesting thing that I found was that he's having so many touches inside the box. This season, he's second for touches in the box. Only Salah has had more penalty area touches than Grealish. Now, when I look at his XA and XG numbers, as you pointed out, they aren't the best. Now, what's happening is that he's basically playing in a very wide role on the left. He's not exactly playing as an inside forward like he was last season for Villa, and this is why he hasn't even been getting as such into goal threatening positions. And even the goal he scored this season against Norwich, you would have noticed, was something which came off his knee, and it was an inadvertent goal. He didn't know much about it. His position isn't ideally suited to someone who's likely to haul big. I think he's the kind of player who's potentially going to tick along here and there, but even now I'm not so sure about him with Foden in the mix, with Sterling there, Foden there, Mahrez, Jesus won't be here this week, but over the long run, I mean, if I own Grealish, I'd probably keep him, but long term, I won't be looking to buy.
Yeah, fair enough. All right, let's touch on Man City's defence as well. I've got Cancelo's numbers on the screen at the moment, which have by no means been phenomenal. What I don't have on, and what I should, but unfortunately we don't have the capability yet, are his defensive numbers, which are far, far better, as are the City defence in general, Bakar.
Absolutely. I mean, City, when you look at, defensive underlying statistics, they're top for every single thing, you name it, least shots inside the box conceded, least big chances conceded, least XG conceded, least non-pen XG conceded. There's not much to say. I mean, this is as good a time to buy a City defender as any, and I really do think they're going to go on a run of clean sheets. Even this week alone, they have a 60% chance statistically, according to the odds, of keeping a clean sheet versus Burnley, which is very, very high. Next week they have Brighton, then Crystal Palace. Honestly, I won't even look at the fixtures when it comes to City. They have a watertight defense and they can keep a clean sheet against anyone. I think now is the time to get on at least one of their defenders.
Okay, don't think we need to say too much more about Man City's defence. If you can afford it, get them in. Burnley, Brighton and Crystal Palace next. Norwich versus Brighton, and it's another defence that you want to talk about here. I'm guessing, Bakar, it's not going to be Norwich's defence.
Of course. That's, I mean, the less said about the Norwich defense, the better. They just seem, primed to be one of the teams to go down the season. Their defensive numbers have been all over the place. They're conceding, an abnormal amount of big chances, almost conceding on average 3 big chances per game. Their XG conceded is almost 14. It's almost like 2 per game. That's very, very bad for a team in the Premier League. I just think they're a very good team to target when it comes to when it comes to defenses or for attackers.
Yes.
Either way, I mean, the less said about them, the better.
They are a gift for FPL managers in many respects. We've already talked about the effect it had on SARS stats. What effect may it have on their opponents on Saturday, Brighton? We can expect Mopé to be amongst the top for key chances and XG and that sort of thing. But let's talk about Brighton's defence as well, Bakar, because there's still plenty of investment in and around Brighton's defence. Do you feel like their days are numbered, or is there still opportunity here to jump on that bandwagon?
I won't invest in them personally, but because of their fixtures after this game week, they have Liverpool and City in game week 9 and 10, and those fixtures are very, very hard. I just think this is a good week to hold on to them, though, because Norwich, they're in the bottom 3 for shots in the box, XG and big chances. I think Brighton should keep a clean sheet in this one, and I'd be very surprised if they concede.
Okay, Southampton versus Leeds, an intriguing one for FPL managers here. Let's firstly talk about Rafinha. It's highly likely that Rafinha is going to miss this game. He's been putting in some fantastic performances south of the equator for his national side. However, it's a long journey back to rainy England, Bakar. And as far as I remember, his last Brazil fixture is on the early hours of Thursday. Friday even potentially.
Friday.
Which would mean that the chance of him getting back for a Saturday 3:00 kickoff are pretty slim.
Exactly, and I think there's every chance that FPL managers will probably have to dip into their bench and look for a replacement. Um, I see a lot of people playing Livermento, um, particularly because they think that with Rafinha out, that potentially affects Leeds. I was going through some data last season, James, and in the 12 games that Rafinha missed, Leeds' attacking underlying numbers were more or less the same to the games in which he was playing in. They were still averaging 2.1 big chances per game and 1.62 xG per game, even in the 12 games that Rafinha missed, which tells me that Leeds are more of a system-based team. And even without Rafinha, they have the capability to score against Southampton. Now, I think Livramento was a very good pick on paper, but I don't think that Southampton are going to keep a clean sheet, even if Rafinha isn't around.
Okay, ominous signs potentially then for those depending on their bench in game week 8. Now, viewers, when Bakar and I are preparing for these videos, Bakar will send me a list of bullet points. You've put for this bullet point Armstrong, and Bakar, I've taken a leap of faith here and assuming that you mean Adam Armstrong, not Stuart Armstrong, who's still yet to have an appearance in the Premier League. So Adam Armstrong is currently on screen. And what have you got to say about him? He seems quite popular amongst wildcarders this week.
He's an interesting one. I still think for those on wildcard, I prefer Tony because I think Brentford are more fixture proof, and I expect Tony to be more of a long-term pick. But Adam Armstrong is standing out primarily because of Southampton's fixtures. Now they have Leeds, Burnley, Watford, Villa, Norwich in their next 5. I can't exactly ask for a better run of fixtures, and Adam Armstrong is only 6 million. So for those who are looking for a differential, I think he could be a good option. Southampton's attacking numbers haven't been the greatest this season, but they've had a very tough run of fixtures. So there's that to keep in mind. And the actual litmus test is going to start from this week onwards when they face Leeds. Now, this is a fixture where they should be scoring goals. Adam Armstrong, I think it will be on penalties as well in the absence of Ward-Prowse, who was suspended. That's another string to add to his bow. But I think he's a decent differential to pick on a wild card.
And interesting to see as well that even though he's only scored 1 goal and assisted 1, he is actually underperforming his XG. His XG is nearly double, 1.96. So maybe we'd be looking at him a little bit differently if, like a couple of other players, he had overperformed and maybe had 3 or 4 goals in his first 7 games. An interesting one to look out for as his fixtures turn. Okay, 5:30 kickoff. It is Brentford versus Chelsea. Plenty that could be said about this fixture, particularly for those wildcarding. Let's start with, you've just mentioned them, Bakar. Let's mention them again now in more depth. The Brentford attack. I've got Tony and Mbeumo's stats on screen at the moment.
Yes, and James, they're standing out this season. I think there will be excellent options to pick going forward, particularly after this week that they run Leicester, Burnley, Norwich, Newcastle. I think that's a very underrated run in terms of fixtures, and they're likely to offer a lot of value going forward. They're a bit like Jimenez and Hwang I spoke about earlier, where Tony drops deep and he sort of threads the passes through the defense for Mbeumo, who's making the runs to profit, which is why Mbeumo has the better XG. But you'd be surprised to hear that Tony is actually top among all players in the league for big chances created this season. I think his passing is extremely high quality and is extremely underrated this season. And I think with his chance creation capabilities, he's gonna get a lot of bonus points as well whenever he scores. I think this duo is gonna be really, really good for the FPL community going forward. Even in the game against Liverpool, they played recently in game week 6, they had an XG of over 2.5, which is highly, highly, highly impressive against someone like Liverpool, which tells me that they might be a fixture-proof team. I won't be surprised if they scored even against Chelsea.
Well, as a non-Chelsea defence owner, I would love to see that. And yeah, I am getting kind of Vardy Mahrez vibes from that season in which they won the Premier League. I mean, that's a bit hyperbolic, but these budget options who are incredibly cheap this season probably going to be a lot more expensive in seasons going forward, assuming, of course, that Brentford stay up, which it looks like they will. And Mbeumo, of course, out of position midfielder as well, incredibly cheap and playing in a top two, which is always nice. He's a bit of an FPL gift, really. Let's talk about their opponents, though, Bakar, because, plenty could be said. You have singled out Ben Chilwell, who has, has he taken the throne in that left-back position from Alonso, or is there still doubt over his starting berth, do we think?
There will be some element of doubt, obviously, and I can't say this with any kind of certainty, but I think, in my personal opinion, that he has taken the shirt, and I think it's his to lose at the moment. If I was on wildcard, I definitely pick Chilwell. I think it's worth the risk, particularly after his performance against Southampton. I know he gave away the penalty, but overall he had a very good game. He was actually unlucky not to have had more points. He had a great chance going forward, which is well saved by McCarthy. Chelsea have a great defense. Their fixtures are as good as they get. I think Chilwell is worth the risk personally, because he's a high upside differential.
Excellent. Okay, and
he's also been rested tonight by England, which is also another thing to add.
Always helps. Always helps. Let's very quickly touch on a couple of Chelsea's attacking assets, Bakar. Namely, I'm interested in your thoughts on Lukaku, who, you know, for all of his goal threat in that Southampton game, still isn't really delivering when it comes to actual FPL points returns. I assume that he was one of the acquisitions that you made during your wild card, and you'll be happy to keep holding.
He was my captain. He was my captain.
Hey, well, better than Ronaldo, I suppose. The question remains, though, I suppose, for those that aren't yet on the Lukaku train, when is the best time to get on him? Because it doesn't necessarily feel like this Brentford fixture is screaming out in terms of Lukaku's potential returns.
I think the key to unlocking his potential is going to be Mount's fitness. I think Mount is going to start against Brentford, and Reece James coming back will massively help as well. You know, we've heard news that he's back training, so if those two are in the starting lineup, I think Lukaku's very likely to do well. You were asking when is the right time to jump on him. I think game week 9 is as good as it gets. I think he's the obvious captaincy shout at home to Norwich. At a time when Salah is playing Man United away, I think that's prime Lukaku territory, where he can bully defenses and stat pad his way to a haul.
Yes, that could well be a massacre. Norwich fans not looking forward to that fixture at all. Okay, Sunday's fixtures. One at 2 o'clock, one at 4:30 GMT. We'll start with the 2 o'clock fixture, which is Everton versus West Ham. And it's another defence, Bakar, that you'd like to talk about here. Everton's defence, they face a pretty potent West Ham attacking force. Antonio Benrahma still doing well. How do you rate Everton's chances in this 2 o'clock fixture on a Sunday?
I think West Ham will score, but Everton's defense has impressed me this season. You know, under Rafa, they've been very, very solid. They're actually third best when it comes to big chances conceded, fifth best for expected goals conceded. They have stood out. I mean, their fixtures have been favorable. That's for sure. But even in the game against United, they limited them to fairly low XG opportunities, and they played really well. So this game will be an interesting game to watch. You know, because the one thing I have in mind with West Ham is that the last time they played after an international break against Southampton, they were all over the place. And they could barely string 2 passes together. So this might work into Everton's favor this week.
Okay, and what does that mean for Benrahma and Antonio? I've got their stats up on the screen at the moment. Should owners be concerned at all?
In my opinion, Benrahma is still posting one of the best numbers in that bracket, 6.5-ish million bracket. And West Ham, strike me, is the kind of team who can score against any defense. I know their fixtures coming up are very, very tough, but I back the West Ham attack to get a goal in almost any of the fixtures they have coming up. So I'd keep both Antonio and Benrahma. I don't think it's a pressing transfer to get rid. I'd pick Antonio on wildcard even despite the fixtures. Maybe after game week 11 might be time to get rid, but I think this fixture away to Everton and then Spurs at home in particular is a good fixture for West Ham.
Yeah, 9 attacking returns from Antonio in 6 games. You can't really ask for much more than that for a mid-priced forward. Okay, and that second kickoff, Newcastle versus Spurs. And Spurs assets have been gaining popularity, but I've actually got St. Maximin on the screen at the moment. He could be one of the beneficiaries of the much talked about Newcastle takeover. Bakar, what do you think this could do for Newcastle? Firstly, in the short term, and then potentially, are we going to be looking at Newcastle in the next couple of seasons as a kind of premium top 6 club?
I mean, it could be realistic. I mean, who knows what's to come? But I mean, with Saint Maximin, his assist potential this season has been great. He's been creating lots of chances. His goal threat hasn't been all that great this season, but I think with Wilson back, there's a good chance that he does well against this week. Spurs have been all over the place defensively this season, and I think this is yet another fixture in which Saint Maximin could do well in. I won't advise anyone to buy him because their fixtures are fairly mixed. But if you have him, I think this is a good fixture to keep him for. I expect the crowd to be buzzing as well after the takeover, and you never know. You never know. Newcastle might win 2-3-1 or something like that.
It does feel like that would fully complete this story arc of Newcastle joy at this takeover for the most part. We won't get into any of the moral implications there, but let's talk about their opponent Spurs, who like I said, have been gaining in popularity. I've got Heung-min Son on screen, who one of those players whose stats never really do him justice. But again, if you were wildcarding this week, Bakar, would he be on your watch list?
I would consider him, but I don't think I would pick him before game week 12. Now, after game week 12, Spurs have Leeds, Burnley, Brentford, Norwich, 3 of them being at home. I have some stats out here which would explain why I would ignore Son for the next 3 to 4 game weeks. Spurs this season have been, in the bottom half for shots inside the box, big chances, XG. They haven't really looked great going forward. They're lacking that attacking fluidity. I mean, I know Son is an elite finisher, but this season, 8 midfielders have had more shots inside the box. 7 midfielders have had more big chances, and 6 midfielders have a better XG than Son. So his underlying stats aren't great. And especially for someone who's priced at 10.1 million, I think there are better ways of investing cash.
I mean, if we're ignoring Jamie Vardy, who's in that price bracket, surely we have to ignore Son as things currently stand. But a couple of people did jump on him last week, including actually Abdul, who obviously benefited hugely from that. And what a fixture. I mean, a differential captain, I think, away at Newcastle. Could be a nice Sunday afternoon for Son owners. We also have some Monday night football in game week 8, always a treat. Arsenal versus Crystal Palace, not the most enthralling game. If this was being played in game week 1 or 2, there would be no FPL interest. As it stands, however, there is growing interest in Arsenal, particularly their defence. I've got Kieran Tierney on screen, mostly so that you can see his fixtures, which are great. But what have you got to say, Bakar, about Arsenal's defence, particularly in this game week 8 fixture?
Now Ramsdale is someone who's caught my eye, and I think he's one of the best goalkeepers to pick on a wildcard. A lot of matches on wildcard, so I think that's an interesting point regarding Ramsdale. Tierney I won't personally buy Tierney at this point in time, but I think he's a good hold if you own him. His underlying numbers going forward aren't great, but given how solid Arsenal have looked, I think he's worth keeping. Arsenal have conceded just the 1 goal in the past 4 games, and this is a huge turnaround from the 12 goals they conceded in the first opening 3 fixtures. And I do think the introduction of Ben White and Gabriel as a partnership, Partey playing in there, Ramsdale being in goal has massively improved their defense. And over the spell of 4 games that I mentioned, I know the fixtures have been relatively easy, but Arsenal have conceded the least amount of big chances. And I think they will offer a lot of value in defense going forward. And this is why I think at least one defender, either a keeper or Ramsdale would be my go-to picks on a wild card.
Yeah, Tierney, you buy him for that attacking threat, but as you rightly point out, he hasn't really provided 0.26 XG, 0.45 XA when there are cheaper options in that Arsenal backline, the likes of Ben White, the likes of Ramsdale. It's hard to justify that extra expenditure. I did it on the wild card after the first international break, so I'm relieved that we're still talking about Arsenal's defence, but I wish I'd gone for one of their cheaper options, to be honest, because he hasn't contributed with a single attacking return so far in his 7 appearances, which I think is quite unlike Tierney, who seemed to be pretty potent going forward last season. Anyway, we live and we learn. Bakar, thank you so much. Out of interest, what time is it over there at the moment?
It's 1 a.m.
1 a.m. This is what I'm talking about when I say that Bakar puts a lot of effort into these videos. The reason why we're recording so late is because I am going on holiday tomorrow and was busy today sorting out passport issues, etc. So Bakar, thank you for adapting to my schedule.
No problem.
Always
a pleasure. Hope you have a great holiday and a great weekend.
Thank you. What it means is that I will not be here for next week's preview. It will probably be Fergie in my shoes. So guys, do enjoy that. But thank you very much for watching. Bakar, thank you so much. Remember, guys, if you don't follow at BigManBakar on Twitter, go and do it. He's also on Instagram. He's got a very active and intriguing Instagram too. So check him out on Instagram as well. What's your handle on Instagram again, Bakar?
Same, BigManBakar.
It's exactly okay. That makes it nice and easy. Okay, so do it on both. Do it on both. Like I've said, he is a trove of FPL wisdom. Right, guys, if you enjoyed this video, do give it a thumbs up. Thanks for watching.
Thanks, James. Enjoy the holiday. Good luck, everyone.
Cheers, Bakar. Bye, mate.